What's going on, sports card hobby family? Another day, another sports card video. We've got a special one today, a special episode of the DPZ show with Cajun Cardboard Brian and Chris Hoge from Card Ladder. They are here to talk about Jordan Grails, their opinions on Grails and so forth. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about this particular space, along with 90s inserts and some general talk as well, this is going to be a great episode. Before I get started, wanted to talk a little bit about supplies. I've got a new affiliate link below for Card Capsule, and of course we're talking about cases. One thing I like about this is I've got a lot of SGC slabs, and a lot of times I'm trying to buy a case, it's like, oh, can it also fit the SGC slab in it? This one fits all of them, so it's a beast and very reasonably priced.
Spreads, chill out.
What's great as well is they also offer regular supplies, semi-rigids at a very reasonable price, card sleeves, and given that it's winter time, they've got these slab covers. I like to call them slab sweaters to keep them warm. Hey, look, we don't want our slabs getting cold in the wintertime, but these suckers are pretty cool. So thank you very much to the Card Capsule team for sending me this stuff to show you guys, and I do have an affiliate link down below all to check it out, and I believe they've got for first-time buyers, it is 10% off of the order on the website. So check out Card Capsule, as well, of course, as the most premium slab protector on the market, SlabMags. There's a 10% off coupon code down below. Treat yourself this holiday season. All right, to the episode. Frank, roll it. I can't do this. I can't do this anymore.
Welcome, friends, to another episode of the DPZ show on the Sports Card Dad Network and another episode of the Grails series. Today, I have two hobby stalwarts in Cajun Cardboard, Brian and Chris Hoge, Chris McGill from the Card Ladder Group. We're talking about Michael Jordan because, I mean, if you're going to talk about someone like Michael Jordan, you need subject matter experts. In my opinion, I feel like Brian and Chris check those boxes. They know most things about Michael Jordan, and they speak very eloquently of the man. They know his cards. They know his market. And, you know, I'll say that the first thing I'll say, though, is, Chris, you see these golden sales, that golden sale for Jordan was at the 97 EX 2001 that just set a record.
Yep.
His market, it's sort of evergreen. It's always strong. If any, it almost feels like it sort of dictates. You know, you think of those big stocks, those big, massive movers in market, and everything sort of kind of follows those big markers in the market. And when they're up, then it kind of buoys the hobby a little bit. But let's face it, Michael Jordan is on his own planet. He's his own thing. His cards are something else. They're some of the most expensive cards. I'm sure we're going to walk through just how many expensive cards he has, but that's what this show is about, a Grail. So before we jump into discussing which cards are Grails, I want to ask you both first, what is your definition, each of you, of a Grail card for any athlete? Brian?
Look, dude, we're not going to talk about Grails until you explain how Chris and I are third. We're third in line after you talk about LeBron James with some guy named Josh who's got this little piddling LeBron James, collection. He's got a couple of LeBron golds, a few RPAs. And then you didn't even come to Jordan next. You went to Kobe. Next. The only way that I'm going to let you off the hook is I'm going to say it's a baseball analogy, and we're batting third, Chris. You know how they always put the best hitter third?
They do.
So we're the best hitters. So we're third. Jordan's third. So all is right in the world. I'm gonna let you off the hook with that. To answer your question, Grails is it's subjective. We talked about this in a Jordan group with a bunch of I'm a minnow amongst whales in this group, and we talked about this. And dollar figure matters. Scarcity matters. Print run, which is not necessarily the same thing as scarcity, matters. Demand, how many people want the card, matters. How often it comes to market matters. Different people have different definitions of Grail. So, in a nutshell, for me, I don't throw the word around too loosely. In fact, I think I did a video maybe a year ago where I was like, people use the word Grail too loosely. There was one Holy Grail last I checked. There was one Last Supper. There was one Holy Grail. We use the word Grail plural oftentimes. So how about, let's say, $25,000 or more in my world. That is what I would consider a Grail for Michael Jordan.
Okay. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's really that's a good definition. That's on point. If we were to throw a bone to a more expansive notion of the term Grail, then maybe it would be a card that once you acquire it, there's absolutely no inclination or desire to sell it anytime soon. And the card has to have that property as a standalone card. So some of us build sets, and like we could acquire a common that completes a set. In that case, even though we have no desire to sell that card because it's being incorporated into a set that we're building, I wouldn't consider that a Grail necessarily either. So there's something about a Grail to me is like a card that when you acquire it, there's such a sense of satisfaction because there's no desire in the immediate future. There's no plans on acquiring it and then selling it to get something else. The Grail is the end goal card. How about that?
There's a sigh of relief, right?
Yes.
When you get it in the mail or when it arrives in your vault or on your card ladder showcase, there's literally an exhale that you're like, that's a big win. Like that's a huge step forward. You got to feel a big step forward,
Definitely.
Yeah, no, those are some good points. I mean, you bring up something that it's a time and place right now that's going to date this video for all time, but it's pretty obvious somebody's building a PSA 10 1987 Fleer set. Let's just be honest. You've got a few of those pop up, and I'm like,
I think there's two. I think there's two out there.
Is there two out there?
I know where one is. Yeah, I think there's two of them out there. I think our good friend Naz has one, and then a gentleman named Rob in Texas, who's an old 86 Fleer friend of mine, had the first 87 Fleer set, which is much more rare than the 86 Fleer set. Much more rare.
That's pause and time out on this conversation. How fun is that? How fun is this hobby? How exciting is it where there's so many layers? We can talk about so many different things, but we're talking about an 87 Fleer set, and Brian knows who's doing it, knows the people that are trying to accomplish that. And Chris and I were talking. I sent him a message yesterday with a Griffey card I bought, and I'm like, and he verifies it, which is great. He puts your name in there, like this is the person who bought it. It's like, well, now everybody knows I bought that card. But it's actually, I think the transparency is a really cool thing because it shows everybody what everybody's doing and how fun it is and how we're collecting and building our cards out and our PCs and all that. By the way, I literally bought that card around this time last year, sold it this summer, and then rebought it back because I don't know, what are you going to do?
Can't be a Grail, man. It can't be a Grail. No,
that wasn't a Grail, but it was an important card to have in the PC, and I wanted to get it back. So, no, but it's true. So back to Grails. The satisfying feeling of owning something. It's hard to move. You're not going to move it. I feel like sometimes you just it's almost impossible to get back to. Right? Once you sell it, you're done. Obscurity, rarity, or not, it's a card that once you have it, you're part of this club. It's important. Once you let it go, you may not get it back. Case in point, that card I just bought, I was able to get it back. So it's not a Grail. A Grail would be a card if I sold it, it's gone. And I'm going to have to convince somebody to sell it by overpaying through my teeth to get it back. So with Michael Jordan, there seems to be so many of these cards. And you used the $25,000 number, Brian. And Chris, you're saying, okay, it has to be that card that kind of more to what I was just saying. It's harder to get it back. With Michael Jordan, and you did a hierarchy video, right? Talk me through, in your opinion, we'll start with you since you want me to I can pull up your stuff now, but talk me through, in your opinion, the Grails of Michael Jordan. And you can order them out if you'd like. Yeah. I know we're getting right to it, but you can order them out if you like, or you can walk through them in just any order you'd please. Yeah,
there's I threw out the $25,000 number. Obviously, there's 320, 86 Fleer PSA 10s. Chris and I may not agree on whether that's a Grail, right? Like, so there's the dollar threshold, but there's a lot more criteria to it. It's definitely an amalgamation of criteria that denotes what a Grail is. It can't just be a very expensive card. Man, Chris is really, really good at this part of the hobby. I put the MJ hierarchy together, extracting information from a bunch of really big brain Jordan collectors out there in the world. Chris was right at the top of the list. Josh Dawson was there. Frankie at 3,500 was there. Some other people were lurking in the shadows, helping out behind the scenes that just didn't necessarily come on the channel. And we put together a pretty fun run there with the MJ hierarchy. But I used 4 criteria, Dennis. I used scarcity, demand, value, and aesthetics, which is as subjective as you can get to sort of put that together. And at no point ever, and I tried to make this abundantly clear from the beginning, this is not me saying these are the best in order start to finish. I just wanted to put something on paper to help new collectors who come in the hobby have a framework to work with. If you're new to the Jordan world, you may not want to collect the way I collect. I collect 90s and 80s inserts and parallels, rookie cards or XRCs, and I stop at 1998, which is kind of a weird year, right? Because Chris, we talk about this all the time. Playing years matter. Well, I collect 98 Jordans, then I don't collect 99, 2000, but then I collect again the 2 years he played for the Wizards, and I do collect those cards. A lot of people don't collect Wizards stuff, and so Jordan really is a buffet, and it's a microcosm within the hobby where you can kind of pick and choose how you want to do it depending on what your budget is. And then once you do decide what you want from the buffet, well, then you can choose whether you want to do it in Raw or PSA 7 or PSA 10 or BGS 9.5 or any of the above. And so there's a million different ways to do it. And I've made numerous videos on how you definitely can collect Michael Jordan cards on a budget. I don't ever want anyone in the hobby to say, I missed the boat. That is not correct. That is absolutely not correct. You can definitely collect Michael Jordan on the same budget that you can ultra-modern quarterback prospect or Anthony Edwards or Zion Williamson or John Morant collect. I mean, if you can do that, you can do Jordan. Trust me. It's just a matter of getting educated, and that just takes time.
Great. Anything to add to that, Chris?
Nah, he's exactly right. And as I'm, seeing sales data come in on various Michael Jordan cards more recently, the Jordan cards that have been faring really well are, the ones that were traditionally overlooked or were considered low end.
True. And
ones that people weren't so interested in. And it's just interesting because sometimes those cards can be pretty low population themselves, and they can be as beautiful and as aesthetically pleasing as even the most high-end Jordan. So when I was looking at sales, maybe it was earlier today or maybe it was last night, the Jordan Power Boosters in a BGS 9.5. He has a few of them. This one is I think it's the last appearing one in the base set from 95. This Power Boosters just sold for I think $1,500 on eBay the other day. The prior sale was like $600. That card just made a huge jump. So yeah. I completely agree with Brian that there's always a chance to come into Michael Jordan collecting and forge your own path and find cards that you appreciate that are more affordable or readily available and reshape the market based on what you like. That's something that's really cool about Michael Jordan collecting. And there are still definitely really cool inserts, really cool parallels that never got the love or haven't gotten the love so far from Michael Jordan collecting that are still really affordable, I think.
I mean, you look at some of these cards you're perusing through here, Brian, and these are obviously very important ones. These are notable ones. But what you're saying, Chris, is it matters too. And I think that's been some of the criticism that I think some folks get. I know I get it a lot because I talk about higher end cards. I talk about the 90s and the inserts, the parallels. It's because I love those cards. And that's kind of where I've settled. I went all over the place and I kind of just come into this, this is where I want to be. I love it. Basically primarily because I don't really understand all of it. And there's so much to learn. And that's exciting to me. It's something that can keep growing and learning. And it's just there's an endless amount of cards, really cool looking ones that you'd be like, why is this not? There's a Topps Hobby Masters, I think it's what it's called. It looks like a superfractor, and you can buy it for $100. Ken Griffey Jr. for $150. I mean, it's not held at the same higher regard, but it's still a beautiful card nonetheless. So there's a lot of ways you can collect without spending too much money. I think that's important. That's a great takeaway. But I want to ask you both a question as we're walking through these cards. And I feel like I know the answer I'm going to get from the two of you, and I don't want to be the one talking too much, but do you feel like the 90s is preferably like, 96 through like 98, 99 is going to, in the future, is going to be heralded as like that golden era of cards because of the fact you had this junk wax era that preceded it. And after the fact, you have this modern era where we see so many cards being printed and for all the different reasons. Do you feel like that's just that sandwich effect, basically? It's going to lift up that segment of cards, that whole era. I mean, I love it, so I'm biased. What do you both feel like? Is that going to be like that era? Players, not just Michael Jordan and LeBron James and the big players, but the notable Hall of Fame players. I know you spoke to it a little bit, Chris, before in some of your shows. Do you still feel like that's going to be important?
Yes. And I think I'm just jotting some notes to myself here about like, what is it that makes 90s collecting so popular? Why is there so much demand for 90s cards? And I think there's a ton of factors, but I'll try to touch on a few of them. One of them, obviously, I think the most obvious one is just the demographic factor that so many of us who are now in our 30s, 40s, 50s we grew up collecting cards on some level. So, and now, for various reasons, either we've just stayed in the hobby or we came back to the hobby, and we're going to gravitate to the stuff that we're nostalgic for and the stuff that we think is the best or looks the best and so on and so forth. And I think that's like the most obvious answer is the nostalgia component for those of us who grew up like collecting and admiring and chasing those cards. But the other things that make the 90s special with respect to Michael Jordan is, number one, when Michael Jordan was at his apex in the 90s, basketball, NBA television ratings were never higher. And they never got back to that peak in the subsequent years, even as basketball became more and more of a global sport, as social media started to take off, as, players make more and more money, the advertising deals are more and more lucrative, the contracts are larger and larger, the teams make more and more money, the teams have become worth more and more money. Even with all of that in mind, basketball as a spectator sport on television was never able to return to the Nielsen ratings peak that it had when Michael Jordan was dominating the game. And it's not even particularly close. The Nielsen ratings that Jordan was getting when he was winning championships in the 90s, they are multiples larger of recent championship viewership scores. So you have that factor, which is just when Michael Jordan was the best basketball player in the world, more people were watching and paying attention to it than at any point before or after by a significant margin. So there's an iconicness, an iconic nature to Michael Jordan's stature as a basketball athlete that has played out in terms of how many people consumed the NBA product when he was the face of it. And then the other thing that I think matters, and it's related to that point, is sort of the quote unquote the death of monoculture, the death of there being just one set of pop stars, one set of athletes, one set of opinions that are distributed to us through just a limited amount of platforms, and that's what we have to react to and to like or to dislike. Where the internet has really helped to distribute our preferences and spread them out substantially. So it's tough to imagine a world where we ever go back to a monoculture where everybody's exactly.
You can't put it back in the bag, dude. It's over. Chris, look, just to buffer what you just said, my son's like, you got to watch this David Beckham documentary. You got to watch this David Beckham documentary. And I'm like, Cam, when am I gonna find 12 hours? I was like, I can't get my stuff done during the day as it is. There's a list of 150 things that I wish I had time to do. I want to play FIFA for 4 hours every morning. I got to go to work. I got to make a living. I want to collect cards. I want to buy cards. I got to make content. You're right, Chris. It used to be where all the information was hyper focused in one location. But to go along, I don't necessarily think the NBA isn't bigger today than it was then. You just got to remember how many people are consuming NBA on their phones or tablets or something like that, and that's why, Nielsen ratings, I think, is a measure of TV. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I have a suspicion that the game has grown by magnitudes. But you are right. If you wanted to watch NBA basketball, you were going to watch the Bulls because they were going to be the ones on TV, and everybody wanted to see what Michael Jordan was going to do, whether it was to watch him fail or watch him succeed, which ended up primarily being success. But it's a different world, man. The other thing, Chris, about 90s, and the reason Chris, when I came in the hobby, you remember I was collecting, I wouldn't say ultramodern because I came in before, I guess ultramodern, I would say 2018 and beyond, but I came in around 2015, 16, I think, and I was collecting current players. I liked prospecting. I liked the idea, and I still do, love the idea of having a vested interest in watching one of my people play the same way when you do fantasy sports, right?
Yep.
Well, I eventually my money just matriculated backwards to hedge risk and to turn this into an investing show. I decided to put my money in a safer location and still derive the same joy from collecting sports cards without as much risk of injury, of off the court stuff, of I don't know how many of these cards were printed, of I don't know what the pop is ultimately gonna be of the Luka Doncic blah 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 parallel. Whereas in the 90s, yes, will we see some population change? Of course. But damn, I mean, look at the damn near most graded card in the world, close to it, the 1986 Fleer. I mean, that population's gone from 312 to 320, I think, in like 5 or 6 years. And so we kind of have some idea, especially the kind of cards that we were showing on the screen right here. We kind of know what's out there, and it's a limited quantity. And the same can't really be said for ultramodern cards, even if you start talking about golds. And I know you love golds, and I love golds. I do too. But like, there's going to be a gold next year, and there's going to be 10 more, and then there's going to be 10 more, and then there's not just prism golds, there's select golds. And there's not just select golds, there's optic golds, and then there's fast break prism golds, and then there's choice prism golds. And so they're doing it to themselves. I say they, Panini, but that's kind of why my money took a time machine backwards into the 90s. That's why my money did that. I wanted to hedge risk.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those are some great points, guys. Thanks. I think the design too. I think the competition between all the different, the one-upping, the other, keeping up with one another. Flair, you got Fleer, you got all these different. I mean, the competition was healthy, and so the consumer wins when that happens. Okay, let's walk through some of these cards you got here, Brian. Sure. I mean, you got this great. Let's talk us through this list you got.
First of all, every card you're seeing, Chris either had it or has it. Okay, he's done some consolidating, and shame on him. I'm bringing him back to collecting my way. Okay, I'm going to bring him back to collecting Jordan my way, where it's quantity and quality, not just quality. Right now, Chris is primarily focused on quality, and he's got some serious quality shit. But just some stuff I decided to pull up. This is my Michael Jordans, and I accidentally put the apostrophe in the wrong place. My wife would kill me for that. Yeah, there's a unique one that's not from the 90s. This is a pretty cool one. It's got a Jordan patch autograph on the front, and it's serial number to 10. You can barely see it down there in the bottom left. And then on the back, they got Baby Goat. They got LeBron right there. Where he belongs.
Where he belongs.
Yeah. And this is one of the cooler Jordan cards. I mean, I think these are sort of the kind of cards Chris was talking about. If you ask somebody to rank the top 10 or 15 Jordan cards, nobody on earth is going to list this card, right? But go look. There's not very many of these cards in a high grade, and this is a refractor. It's one of the two, I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the two dual refractor Kobe Jordans from the 90s. I think this one in the East-West. I think those are the only two that I know of.
Yep, that's cool.
So an interesting card there because, I would say Kobe's probably certainly top 3 largest, basketball card collector groups in the world. I would think Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, and probably maybe Steph would be a close 4th. I'm guessing. That's just my guess. Hell, maybe it's Doncic. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that collected them. This is all that I have left. Well, I have 2 cards left from my 86 Fleer PSA 10 set. And that was my Grail. And so I actually parted with my, I guess, biggest accomplishment as a collector in my hobby career was putting together the 86 Fleer PSA 10 set with the stickers. And I made a very difficult decision to liquidate that and then push all of the proceeds into some of these Jordan cards that you're seeing, and I'm still doing it. I started thinking to myself, why do I have a $50,000 Johnny Moore card when I can go buy $50,000 worth of Michael Jordans? I just have a hunch that Jordan may age better than Johnny Moore. That's just a hunch. And so I looked in the mirror one day. I was like, what the hell am I doing? And then it was almost like, I got to get rid of this. This doesn't make any sense. It's almost like once I finished the marathon, I was like, it really wasn't, it's really not that big an accomplishment. And so just some other Jordan stuff. And you were right. You nailed it. 96, 97, are the big years. Chris, would you say that? 97 probably more so than even 96?
Yep.
The best year for the 90s cards, and Dennis, you made a tremendous point. They were competing. Like there was not a monopoly. They were competing. They were each trying to outdo the other, and it was awesome. I mean, and I didn't know anything about it at the time. I was trying to, make $1 and get through school and, raise a family. But,
Can I interrupt real quick, Brian? And maybe both of you know of this set. I just learned about it from Adam in the last episode. The Raise the Roof set.
Yeah.
99. Fleer Mystique raised the roof out of 100. Like,
cool set.
Why? Like he was showing me that Kobe. I couldn't afford the Kobe, so I went and got a Tim Duncan PSA 7. But I just wanted one of them. And Tim Duncan's, he's a good player. I just like you look at that thing and it's like this is so amazing. It's just like anyway. I can't. I was like I couldn't even think straight. Like I didn't know this existed. Like so many amazing cards. Like it just goes on and on and on. Carry on. Sorry.
Yep, for sure. The championship PMG, which I think there's one of these that we just found out tonight. There's going to be one of these in the December PWCC Premier Auction, and the credentials, and rubies. So Murderer's Row in December. Interesting timing. Chris, were you surprised, not to get off topic, but were you surprised someone chose December? You know more about the macro stuff than I do, but isn't December traditionally when basketball cards sort of dip a little bit because people are distracted with Christmas and they're a little bit low as far as liquidity and funding?
Yes, and on top of that, December is a time when people's attention, for those who are still interested in buying cards during this time, their attention is largely focused on the ongoing NFL season and the ongoing NBA season. And so now is a time when the Tyrese Halliburtons of the world are the shiny object that people in the card collecting community are hyper focusing on. And it's really the time when the retired greats are less relevant than say, so for example, contrast now to like June when you have the NBA finals going on, and without fail, when the NBA finals come up, it conjures up feelings of previous NBA finals. And it makes us think about the most iconic NBA finals and some of the greatest moments from NBA finals and the greatest champions in the history of the sport. That's a time when people are more inclined to be thinking about the collectibles of a Michael Jordan, of a Kobe Bryant, of a Wilt Chamberlain, of a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a Bill Russell, people like that. And then as you enter into the offseason, that almost seems to be the time when the all-time greats are most ever present in our minds, is when we don't have the distractions of the ongoing NBA season and player storylines that are emerging. So I'm always surprised to see a Michael Jordan Grail come out in December, but not mad about it because it provides a unique opportunity to maybe pick one of those up if that's something on your radar. That it might be a lot more competitive and difficult to get it if they had waited 6 or 7 months before they sent it to auction.
Dennis, Chris just called his shot. I heard what you did there. I heard what you did. He's going to sweep it, Dennis. 1, 2, 3. He's taking all 3 of them. He's going to sweep it.
Yes, he was probably
a bigger legend than he already is.
Why did you bring it up? He's probably not very happy with you bringing it up. Like that was like a little secret.
He did it himself. So if he was going to sweep him, he may not now, right? He just brought a bunch of eyeballs to it.
So you neither of you feel like that's a concern that 3 of them hitting the market, like 3 cards like that hitting the market at the same time, though? Does that generate any concern or no?
Go ahead, Chris. You're better at this stuff than me. You're better at predicting prices. I mean, I go and look at what they sold for after the fact, so I can sound smart. But you're better at predicting what stuff will sell for.
I like the way I like to be like you. I like the way you do it too. I just like to live in the data rather than try and predict what happened. I like to look back rather than look forward. But I think there is a real risk of this diluting the available money that could be put towards Jordan Grails right now. There's a real risk that having 3 of his top dozen or so non-one of one parallels show up in the same monthly auction.
It's $500,000 between the 3 of them. It's going to be
or more.
Probably more. Yeah, minimum 5, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, there's only so much of a budget that people have to spend on cards. And so, if too many cards come to market at the same time, then it can push those budgets to their limit or it can create some underwhelming results. But I do think also, Dennis, that over the longer term, these things smooth themselves out. So sometimes there can be a drought where you don't see any big cards that you're looking for come to auction for months at a time, and then one suddenly shows up and it goes for too high. Mm-hmm. Or you could have the reverse. You could have 3 of them hit the same auction in the same month, and they're probably all going to have some price suppression going on just because of the basics of supply and demand.
Chris, this is a website called Card Ladder. I've got the sales history pulled up, and I just happened to be looking at this before we came on the show because somebody on here was asking about the championship PMG. They said it seems like it sells every month. Right. So I was like, it does kind of seem like it's been selling a lot. It's sold 5 times since February of 2022, so about 5 times in 22 months. Now, if you count the one that's about to sell, that'll be 6. 6 times in 22 months, that's 1 every half a year. I got to believe 5 years from now, there is no way we'll see this happen. This just seems too often. It's a serial number to 50. It's as Grail gets. You're not going to see mine for sale. I'm not going to see, any of the guys that we know. Those aren't going to be up for sale. There's nothing to consolidate into from there. That's kind of like what you consolidate into. So it's not like a piece that they could consolidate into a bigger one unless a green comes along. So I don't know. People always ask the question, it won't always be like this. The market's going to dry up. The market's going to dry up. Do you think the market dries up on tier 1 type stuff at some point where maybe you see it once every couple years?
I don't know. It definitely dried up at one point. If we go back to like the 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 period of time, there were far fewer tier 1 Michael Jordan Grails coming to market than there are currently. And I think the obvious explanation for that is, because they were worth a 10th. So that makes sense. But there is historical precedent for there being far fewer of these cards in circulation. But and the other difference too, though, is that back then didn't have monthly Golden auctions, monthly PWCC auctions, quarterly Robert Edward auctions, so on and so forth. The independent auction houses were fewer and they ran fewer auctions. And now there's just being, calling it how I see it, there's a lot of pressure being applied by people who work at the auction houses to induce collectors to sell their best cards. Because those people at the auction houses, they're working towards increasing the bottom line of the business. They're able to locate and identify a lot of these collectors through social media. And they understand that if these cards are able to come to market, that's going to increase the bottom line for their business. So they're following what the business incentive is. And there are some collectors too who are going to say, I wasn't maybe planning on selling this card, but this person's making a good point. Maybe the market will go down from here. Maybe it's a good time for me to sell it right now. And you can just kind of see how people get talked into selling their cards when they really didn't have any intention to do that. But they got a good sales pitch, and now they're selling their cards. So I think that's another factor too that we're probably going to have for the foreseeable future is the constant pressure from the business entities that make money when collectors sell their cards, and the more collectors sell their cards, the more money they make. There's going to be a constant pressure from them that wasn't there 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. That pressure is going to be there, encouraging people to sell their cards. And so I think that pressure combined with the high prices that these cards are commanding right now, those two factors alone are enough for me to think, yeah, we're probably going to continue to see, I don't know, a one PMG champ every 6 months, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Every once in a while, Chris? Do you ever like every once in a while think to yourself, you're looking at a card and you're like, well, you don't have kids, but like, I'll be looking at a card and I'll be like, I could buy my 16-year-old a used car that I need to buy in the next couple of months. All I got to do is sell this one card. Mm. I'm like, nah, I'm just going to go to work and work harder and make a little bit more money. I just can't let go of it. What do you think about this, Chris? I've got the index for Jordan pulled up, and this is indexes are indexes, and you can explain what indexes are, and we all kind of understand what they are, and you don't have to go into that. It'll take forever. But like, is this surprise you that it's kind of down over the last 3 months, like significantly down?
Well, what percent? It's down about 2.5%.
2.6, yeah, 2.6.
No, it doesn't surprise me. That's what I would expect. I think it's the time of year. It's also just a general sentiment towards cards is pessimistic right now.
Yeah,
it's about what I would expect. But remember that, and you know this, Brian and Dennis. Yeah. But within that index, that's the general trend. But there are all sorts of cards following all sorts of different trends.
Big cards, right?
Yeah,
that was such an interesting point. I mean, I've listened to a lot of content, Brian and Chris, and I've never heard that before, Chris. That it put such a way. The pressure people are getting. I get these emails from Golden and Alt going 114% of Hammer. Come here, sell the car. You're just like, well, that's a pretty good deal, Maybe. How strong are your hands? I mean, how much do you love that card, or do you need to buy that used car for your kid? I mean, there's all these different reasons that might push you to maybe let go of that card. So we kind of come back to that Grail conversation. When do you just go, I can't? You do that inventory, you go, but if I sell this, I'm not getting it back. You're just not going to get it back. So what are those cards that I'm not going to get that back? No matter how much pressure I get,
yep.
I'm never going to get it back. I'm not going to sell this card, and it stays there. Because I like to think a lot of people like myself have come into the hobby in the last 5 or 6 years, and I've kind of become sort of I guess you'd call me a snob. Now I just want those really great cards from those 4 years in the 90s are the greatest designs. I just find they're fascinating. I want them. I want to have them. I'm not like you, Brian. I can't have a lot of them. I got to sell to get these. But those are the cards. Now I'm kind of settled in that little zone where I like that. I wonder if there's a lot of people like me that came in, kind of learned, went through all the process, and now they're settling in that place. Yeah. Whether it be 90s or wherever it may be, they've settled into where they want to be and how they want a hobby now.
They are, but I don't think it stops. I don't think you're ever going to settle. Dennis, look, 5 years from now, Dennis's collection is going to look very different than today. I know you may think you've settled in. You haven't settled in. You're just migrating. You're a nomad, just like me, just like Chris. I mean, shit, Chris was chasing the luck of the lottery gold set in 9.5, for God's sakes. Yep. And, now he's got the greatest Christian McCaffrey collection on the face of the earth. Like, if somebody would have told Chris that 3 years ago, he'd have laughed in their face.
That's a very good point. Amazing. Very good point.
It's an amazing direction the hobby's going. Again, not to pump Michael Jordan, but we started looking at indexes, and I got curious because I was like, oh, man, the Jordan index is flat. That sucks. And then I decided to pull up basketball over the last year, which is down 34%. And then I pulled up the guy that I think's potentially the greatest player in the world right now, maybe second greatest player in the world, Luka Doncic, who's doing everything right, and every single game he does something more that amazes me. And his cards are down 54%. So I guess Jordan being up 1% over the last year is pretty damn impressive.
It is, yeah. That's always a good benchmark, is comparing it to the sport in general, or comparing it to the latest hot topics, and like, let's see what the data actually bears out. One thing that Brian does on his channel, I do this in my own spare time for fun. Like, Brian will go look at the PWCC weekly results, and he'll just like scroll and just look at Michael Jordan sales and just find all sorts of little interesting things that he wasn't necessarily looking for, but that it happened. And then he's like, wow, okay, so every auction has those, that's like after the last Golden Elite, I just go to Card Ladder, I set the filter Golden only, and I set the dates so it only shows me those Golden results. And I'll do this with PWCC Premier, I'll do it with PWCC Weekly. I'll filter it just to that auction, and I'll sort it by price. And then I'm just like scrolling through it. I'm just seeing stuff that would have never come on my radar, but and it doesn't show up in indexes either, but that informs my opinion on the hobby market. So like one thing I saw in one of the recent auctions was a Chet Holmgren Prism Gold rookie PSA 10 sold for $36,000. And I'm just like, I would have never stumbled into that sale.
Yeah.
And that's a massive sale. Or like, I'll be scrolling the most recent PWCC Weekly, and some of the results that I saw included an Alonzo Mourning Logo Man autograph.
I thought, yeah.
Well after his playing days, sold for $10,000. It was like, there is definitely to Brian's point, people never settle. They're constantly evolving, changing, and so forth. And there's certainly been a change right now to focusing on cards like that Alonzo Mourning Logo Man autograph. Like, if you could be a person with so much 90s nostalgia, but the fact that here's this Logo Man autograph, a game used Logo Man of Alonzo Mourning, that multiple people were bidding thousands and thousands of dollars for that card. Ultimately, somebody won it and paid $10,000 for it. That's astonishing. But that's a price that, like, unless you're really combing through results proactively, you're never going to know that sale happened. But we're all aware that, Zion Williamson's Prism Silver PSA 10 has lost 90% of its value. That's a very visible, iconic thing that we see and that we all pay attention to. But how many people are aware that Alonzo Mourning 30th year Logo Man autograph cards are selling for $10,000?
Right.
That's a really good point. I mean, I've had to go down that rabbit hole with David Robinson. I'm buying from specific David Robinson collectors. I'm buying raw cards like 97s, the essential, the 2001 futures, and the first game jersey card. I mean, I'm buying these cards from them, and I'm going to submit to PSA, get them graded. But no one knows about that. It's like this little thing you're doing, and then you get them graded, and then all of a sudden you got the card, and you try to get up the first pop. The what do you call it? Like the Flair Legacy Row Zero 96. I just picked up the BGS 95 of that from Robinson. It's the only one. It's a pop one. There's no PSA 10. I'm hoping the one I bought raw is a PSA 10. I'll sell you the one, whatever. But that kind of stuff's happening. I think you're right. And I'm terrible at this. I constantly change my mind. So it's probably the worst thing I should have said. I'm settling in. I'm not. I'll probably change my mind in another week or two.
Chris, the dude's hoarding 97 Legacy Collection David Robinsons. Did you hear that humble flex? That was awesome.
No, I'm not hoarding. I have to sell one of them.
I'll keep one of them, but I'll sell the rest. The other 19 Legacy Collection David Robinsons I got.
Yeah, awesome. But it's David Robinson, and I mean, I keep thinking to myself, I love David Robinson, but it's but you think about this, because you both know, I told both of you when I was kind of getting into it again, but you kind of think about, okay, is that a guy though? I mean, I don't know, but the Griffey kind of buoys me. I know that, and that makes me feel good. But then again, it's like, but it's fun. That's the guy I loved as a kid. So you're right though. You keep changing, like Kristen McCaffrey and Jokic and all these different players, like Luka. And is there anybody we're way off topic. That's okay though. Is there anybody, Brian, that you enjoy that's modern that you didn't see yourself collecting? You're collecting now because collectors change their mind. Do you have a player that's like, I didn't think I'd ever be collecting this guy, but I'm actually want to collect this guy?
Yeah. Look, it's really hard. This is going to go viral, right? So I have not bought anything except Jordan cards for a very long time. I dip my toes in the water with Anthony Edwards. I see something special with him on the court, off the court, the way he handles the media, the way he carries himself. I watched a little bit of a game where they were playing against the Celtics in Minnesota, and he literally bullied Jason Tatum and wanted to make sure that he knew it. And in his body language, and I was like, I'm going to dip my toes in the water and start messing with some Anthony Edwards. But then that begs the question, and Chris, I think I might have even reached out to you on this topic, is like, what do I buy? There's 800 quadrillion Anthony Edwards cards out there. I still think his rookie stuff's a little bit overpriced because there's so many options. And so I sort of gravitated towards Prism Gold non-rookie. And so I started just kind of perusing, just kind of looking and maybe touching on a few. And so he's a guy that stands out to me. If you ask me who I think the best player in the world is, it's Nikola Jokic. Chris's guy, it's not close. It's anybody who argues with that can't possibly understand basketball analytics, statistics, or watch enough. You may not like the way he does it. I don't know why you wouldn't. I like the way he does it, but you may not like the way he does it. You may want to see people flying above the rim and dunking the ball and talking shit to people, but he's the best player in the world. And then after that, I like Luka Doncic, I think, is the second best player in the world, and that's coming from a Giannis collector. And then as far as up-and-coming folks, I really like Anthony Edwards. I think he's got a very, very high floor. I think he's a 30-point-per-game scorer at some point with a couple of scoring titles, and then he'll try to push towards MVP if he develops that all-around game. He's never going to be all-around like Luka Doncic. He's not going to be that lead guard type like a Harden or a Doncic or a LeBron, but I think he can score the hell out of it. And he's just scratched the surface. That's just my opinion.
Oh, it's interesting with Luka and the Jokic, how that's gone like this. It seems like in the last few years it's went.
Yep.
Does it feel that way? Like they've literally traded spots? One guy goes here, the other guy.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating stuff. So, back to Jordan Grails. This is where we're talking about that. This is all great. No, this is all terrific conversation. I think everybody's going to want to listen to any of this stuff. It's going to be awesome. So, Michael, you look at the 1 year snapshot and 4K. You're looking out at all that. From a Grail standpoint, we talked about Grails that sell. We talk about Grails, how often they sell, and whether that's a good thing, bad thing. How the seasonality of sales, the pressure that some of these auction houses are having on the collector and putting that pressure on the collector to move some of these cards. You can also say it's a good thing because a lot of these cards are going to land in the hands of some of these folks that really want them. I do feel like what you said earlier, Chris, 2015 and earlier when they're worth a tenth. Yeah, the boom happens. Everybody realizes, I'm not that in love with Michael Jordan, so I'm going to sell these things because they're worth so much money. And now you have people that bought them going, oh my gosh, I'm not that in love with Michael Jordan. I'm going to get rid of them. So all the collectors are sitting on the other side of it going, yeah, I want those. That have learned to love it or want it, have gotten back into the hobby, have always wanted it, never had a chance to get it. Reconcile for me the prices, though. For someone that's wanted Jordan Grails pre-COVID boom, or the boom, let's call it the boom, now looking at these prices that are so much more than they were before, how do you justify buying that now when it used to be so much less?
Every other card's the same way. I mean, every other player is so much more than they were pre-COVID. It's just, this is the safest of the players whose cards are worth so much more since pre-COVID. I mean, other than the guys that have flamed out, or other than the guys that have, like the Zions and, the Ja Morants who's doing stuff off the court. I mean, Doncic can't be any better at basketball than he is right now. He is absolutely insane, unbelievable. And we just looked, his cards are down 50% in the last year, but they're still significantly more than they were in 2018. Everybody's cards are more than they were in 2018 unless they've completely flamed out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I completely agree with that. And, Dennis, there's we were kind of talking about this earlier, but there's an entry point to collect any player for any collector on any budget. It's just a question of, what's your budget and what level do you want to get into the cards at? And then, you have to ask yourself big picture questions like, where is the direction of the sports card market headed? Is this something that I think, will be a store of value, or won't it be? And then if I do think it's a good store of value, then am I owning the cards that I love that also are a good store of value? And you go down a whole decision tree there of composing your collection. And if you don't think it's going to be a good store of value, then you say, okay, well, where would I rather put my money? Where would I rather have it? And or what amount am I comfortable risking? What amount am I comfortable having at risk?
Right. Yeah.
I think these are real questions that people should be asking themselves. I think people should be looking at historical prices, and it should probably temper what otherwise might be an unbridled enthusiasm. Just like when you're looking at Zillow, if that's a hobby of mine. It's just like browsing around Zillow and looking at overpriced houses. And I love how they have the sales history for certain houses on Zillow, and you can look and you can see, oh, this house sold for $150,000 8 years ago, and now it's had a remodel, and now they want $500,000 for it. And I just laugh, and I'm like, no freaking way. So you can sort of take that mentality and apply it to cards, but you know what though, Dennis? I'll sit there and I'll laugh at that Zillow listing, but I'll be damned if 3 days later I don't get the email notification that says this house is pending. So it's questions of what is then you really start asking yourself, what is the value of money? How do you measure the value of money? And then you get into the topic of opportunity cost. If I have my dollar here, then where's the next best place I could have spent it? And is that the place that I would have liked to have spent it or not? But anyway, Brian, that's sort of the thing I think about too, is like,
all relative. It's just all relative. I mean, if everything, here I got David Robinson index pulled up for you. I've got my cursor on 2019 December, and his index is more than doubled.
Yeah.
So.
No, I still think there's something. I mean, your age group too matters. I mean, I just came out of an economic forum or a forecast forum, and it's older people love the higher rates, right? Because you're going to get more on your money. Yep. Younger people don't, because you can't buy in this market when no one wants to pay 7-8% for their home loan when they were used to 3%. So we talk,
6 now, Dennis.
Sorry,
spread some good news, please.
I will. I know, brother. We're pulling back on all. But anyway, you're talking to a banker and an escrow guy here.
Right.
So I think, it's inflationary, deflationary. I mean, all these things, all the economics factor in, the geopolitical, it all factors in. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at the prices of some of these cards, I always look at it this way. When I'm reconciling with myself these decisions, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to spend a material amount of money on any of these cards, it needs to be, even with David Robinson, it needs to be the card. It has to be in that. So you go around, you do the research, the cards that are popular. You go through and find all the collectors of these cards and go, okay, what are they seeking? What are the cards that matter to them? And you kind of drill it down from there. So Michael Jordan, obviously there's a million different places and barriers of entry. You can go in there. So the big cards, if I'm someone that's buying into a big card, I'm going, okay, I feel pretty darn good about spending X dollars on these cards. What are the 5 cards? Since you've given me we've got a big list here that we're looking at from Brian. I'm going to ask you both, give me the top 5 cards for Michael Jordan that you're like, I don't feel like you could lose grabbing and just putting it away and not letting anybody convince you to sell it unless a life event happens.
There you go, Chris.
Yeah, exactly.
Surely they're at least on the page, I would think. Again, Chris may jump into the 101 world. Are we in pretend world, or are we in like real life world?
Right.
If we're in pretend world, Chris and I are going to be on the same page. on the 101 Michael Jordan cards from the 90s. Go ahead, Chris. What are your 5? You're just asking us the 5 that we want in the order that we want them. The 5 that we want the most.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I love this question, and so I'm gonna tie the previous question into this one, because I think ultimately where it gets with cards is that, or for me, the thing that motivates me in collecting cards is the insatiable desire to build the very best possible collection. And it's my favorite pastime. Yep. It's my favorite thing to do. And if I wasn't able to do this anymore, my life would be much more miserable than it currently is. Absolutely. I mean, it's just really what it boils down to is I love playing this game. I love being involved in collecting. I love seeing my collection evolve. I love all the rabbit holes that it's taken me down in terms of learning about sports, in terms of learning about our industry, in terms of learning about checklists and product development. And there's just so much more still to learn that once I've decided that I want to play this game, then knowing my personality type, once I'm in the game, I want to be the very best at the game. So whatever the market ultimately gets to, whatever the price gets to, I have to live within the constraints of a reasonable budget that I set for myself. But beyond that, I'm going to play the game as hard and as passionately as anybody. And with the end goal being trying to build the very best collection I can build. And
Chris has zagged, and so he's mastered this, and that's why. And not that McCaffrey's cheap, but he's not Jordan. And then even Le'Veon Bell, Chris wanted to build the best collection of player X. He chose Le'Veon Bell, who was no slouch by any means, but from a budget standpoint, Chris can be a big swing in that market, and he can dominate it, and he did. And so he gets all of the joy of chasing the mountaintop and trying to be the best in the entire world at collecting a particular player.
That's exactly right.
Anybody can do it, Dennis. If you wanted to be the greatest Brooke Lopez collector in the world, if you put your mind to it, you've probably got the pocketbook to push that direction, because there's not many people out there you're competing with. But you would still educate, and you would still learn, and you would still get the exhale that we were talking about when you put a Grail in your PC, when you pick up a Brooke Lopez black refractor, fill in the blank 1-of-1. But I just choose to swim in the deeper waters with a bunch of sharks and great whites. And I'm okay ranking where I rank. I will never rank at the top. It is impossible. I know 100% for a fact there is no way in the world I'm going to be the greatest Michael Jordan collector in the world. It is impossible. Even if the money was available, it would be impossible. And that's something that we talk about with Jordan, and that's why Jordan's a little bit different. You can have all the money in the world. You can't go take the card from the people that own them. You can't go take a PMG green if you have $10 million unless somebody wants to sell it. You just can't. So Jordan's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's the one thing.
We didn't answer the question, Chris. The 5.
No, that's okay. I want to add to that, though. That's the one thing I feel because I'm a banker, so naturally I'm conservative. At least I'm that type of banker. I'm conservative. I got 4 kids, so I'm really need a new bedroom set. I can buy this. Really cool. So, but what I like, the store value, what you said earlier, Chris, the store value does matter when you go through that, like you said, the decision tree. We're thinking about it, going, all right, is this providential financially? Okay, I got to feel good about the collector base, right? And David Robinson's great. I do not feel the same way about him that I feel about a Michael Jordan, LeBron, or a Kobe, my 3 Kobes, or the juniors, the Ken Griffey Jr. PC that I have that I've at least ended up with now. I look at if I wanted to have the best set, the best collection ever, I know a handful of the people that have the cards that they'll never give up. One of them's a good buddy of mine. I know he will never sell half of them ever. I just know him, and I know where he is in life right now. And there's I still won't sell these. That's how passionate. So I look at that and I go, wow, and there's a handful of people like that. That tells me a lot about the Griffey community. That collecting community is pretty flippin' strong. Okay, I feel comfortable with material spends with this guy.
Yep.
Jordan's got it. It sounds like Jordan obviously is the same way. You're not going to get some of these cards from the people that own them. Josh is talking about the LeBron. He's he knows he can't get certain cards. It's I can't get that. But because no one's going to let that card go. And heck, I don't even know who has this one. That is, I feel like that speaks to the strength of the collectability of that player, the collectors, the collector market for that player. Anyway, I'm sorry. 5.
Top 5. Go, Chris. Go.
Yeah.
We all got
totally
off track.
right, Dennis. You're 100% right about that. All right, so I'm going to take this question to say, what are my 5 most coveted Michael Jordan cards that could hypothetically come to auction at some point in the next few years?
There you go.
And so to me, that's going to rule out the PMG green. That's going to rule out the credentials now. That's going to rule out the one-of-ones. Because there are, by my count, there are 10 base set Michael Jordan one-of-ones in the 1997 and 1998 products. And I don't think we're ever going to see any of those come to market within the next few years. And even if they did, they'd probably be way out of my range. So I'll just focus that on everything else. Okay. And from there, the 5 MJs that I've settled on a lot are for my own collection. So and I own these, which I'm about to name, or at least several of them, I think. Number 1 is the PMG Red. Number 2 is going to be the Gold Embossed Refractor out of 74. And this one is probably not number 2 on most people's list, but I love that card. That card has always been my second favorite Michael Jordan card after the PMG Red. Number 3, I'll probably go towards the 97 Rubies. I own the 98. I don't own the 97. But I think the 97 flies under the radar a little bit. And I think that the thing it's got going for it is it's the first star Rubies, because 96 had a Rubies, but it wasn't numbered. 97 is the first star Rubies. So I think I'll go with that for number 3. I'll go with the 98 star Rubies for number 4, just because I just think it's a stunning, beautiful card. And like I said, I own that one, so biased towards that one. Then I guess for number 5, give me the PMG Championship. It's from 97. It's the second PMG of MJ to come out. It's got the famous Chicago background in it.
Awesome.
And it's got the swirl effect to it. It's just cool. So that'll be my 5.
My 5's easy. Red first, gold second, championship third. And again, I'm going by the same, ruling out the greens like Chris did. Credentials, which is up for auction, 4th, and then right here, 5th. Like, I think Chris and I are pretty close on the same page.
Yeah.
And we're brothers in ownership of the Golden Balls Refractor. But I have it just below those others. So a lot of beautiful cards to choose from for sure. In the Jordan world. And it's always a subject of great debate. If you asked 25, high-end Jordan collectors to name their top 10, none of them, like all 25, would have a different top 10. 100%, not just a different order, like a different top 10. There is no question about it. We do it every day. And I know that we would not all be on the same page. So
very true.
This has been a really great conversation. I want to respect your guys' time, and I know people are just going to eat this up. It's just a lot of zigs and zags within the conversation. It's a lot of fun. I want to finish on one more question for both of you, and I'll answer it myself first because I've just found myself being completely in love with this type of card, and it's a '90s type of card. It feels like it marries the PMG with a superfractor. I mean, not the PMG, 97. I mean, 90. It's just the swirl pattern. I can't get enough of embossed cards. I just feel like, I got picked up this really obscure $200, David Robinson, it's out of 200 something, but it's embossed. I mean, and looking at it with my son, we look at it together. It's like, this is the coolest. Like, this is so amazing. I had a Griffey 97 embossed, a silver embossed. There's a 97 gold embossed, which is like the Grail for us. Embossed cards. Oh, they're just gorgeous. I almost want to just start buying random ones. I'm not going to do that, at least now. Can you both give me, is there a card that brings that kind of emotion out of you? Is there like your favorite type of card that you're just like, I just love the design. I love the way it looks, how it refracts, all of it?
Well, Dennis, are you familiar with the 1994 Topps embossed product?
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I mean,
my wallet.
All the embossed cards you want for a quarter each.
Dude,
basketball.
So like the base set. Only there's just a base set, and then there's one parallel called Golden Idols.
Yeah.
And I just looked. David Robinson is on the checklist.
Oh.
Not very many of them have ever sold, but he has a 1994 Topps embossed David Robinson Golden Idols card. Super cheap. I mean,
it's not going to be on there, bro.
Oh, yeah. Everything is on Card Ladder, Dennis. How dare you?
I was just looking at that CSG 6. Yeah, I was looking at this. So this is the whole theme of this product is embossed.
I like it.
It's
that
cool.
one is beat to hell. That should be somebody paid $4 too much for that one.
But do you see? I think it's a different kind of embossed. Maybe the embossed I'm talking about. It's the one that has like it fracts. You almost refracts through the card, so you can turn around on the back. I mean, like pull up any embossed like. Put 1997 silver, 1997 Topps Finest embossed Ken Griffey Jr. You'll see it'll show up. You should have a sale somewhere. Yeah, there you go. That PSA 10. That's the one I regrettably sold.
Mm-hmm.
That is the kind of embossed. That was actually my card I sold. That is, to me, those look so. They're just the picture doesn't know justice. In hand, this thing is it's mesmerizing, you know. It's like that Raise the Roof. The design is just unbelievable. Anyway, is there a card like that? Is there like a design that just gets you and you're like, I gotta have it?
There's so many. I mean, there are so many well-designed 90s cards. I'm struggling to like
a feature, Chris. A feature that I like lenticular. First of all, the word's creepy. I like it. It sounds like, tentacle, but it's lenticular. Lenticular cards. Dennis, like we're talking about this, like the jambalaya right here. Sorry, I always say jambalaya because that's what the food's called here, but I'm sure it's a play on words, jambalaya, because he's dunking the ball. So the jambalaya is lenticular. What else? Hot numbers, lenticular, I think.
Yep, Hot Numbers has a lenticular finish, and so does one of the big men on court. The second year big men on court has it too.
Yep.
Okay, lenticular. Yep. So Chris, give me a couple then. What are the two that just jump out to you? You're like, I just love them.
I like die cuts. Die cuts are not super popular amongst the ordinary collector, and ultra modern collectors almost like resist die cuts.
They resist it. Right.
I always thought die cuts were cool. Whenever you would like get a die cut card in a pack, you knew something special was coming because you see that part of the edges were missing when you sort of like saw what was coming forward in the pack. So I like die cut, but I mean, I can't narrow it into one thing. I just love so many of the design elements that were used in the 90s. I think the OG PMG, the red and green, the first PMGs ever made, the design concept I love on that card because the base set, every card in that base set has a unique design. So basically, like every base card in that set was basically designed as if it was an insert. But then
I'm going through this raw collection that I bought, and they had a complete set of the base, right? And, a lot of those are not worth a lot unless they're perfect condition, right? But I was looking at the base cards, Chris, and I would get to like a random, like a Rodman, and I was like, my God, this looks like it would be the most valuable Rodman card in the world. Like it looks like, and every single card looks like it's something special. And I had to turn it over to make sure, is this something crazy?
Totally. Awesome. Well, and so this base set is gorgeous. And then for the parallels, they just decided we're just going to blow out all of these design elements. We're going to take away all the color, and we're just going to flood it with red and green. Yep. And that's like a really bold decision artistically because it's like we're just going to like all this color, these beautiful colors that were in the background, we're just going to blow it out, and we're just going to flood it with red and green. And it turned out amazing, and you have to like sort of think about what the base set of those cards looks like to fully appreciate what the PMG red looks like.
I know. Yeah.
But once you do have that in mind, the etched hollow foil that they used on the red and green is so. It's just like the way it reflects the light is incredible. It's even different than like later, like the retros and stuff. They don't refract the light in the same fashion that the 97 red and green do. It's not even close when you actually hold them in hand and examine them under the light. There was something about the etched hollow foil cards and the production technique of those. It's just
unbelievable. And once and I didn't, you see it looks really awesome. There's the provenance to it. You hold it in your hand, but when you hold those things, because I have one now, you hold it in your hand, you're like, this is a work of art. Like, I don't even, what? Like, it's almost like, it's hard to imagine like someone pulling one of those out of a pack. Like, what would that even feel like? I try to look, okay, 97, what was I doing? All right, I was playing music, I was 17, I wasn't thinking about this card at all. I know that for a fact. But now you're just like, oh, this is the coolest thing in the world. It must have been like a complete experience pulling that out of a pack. You're right about, and I'm not going to open this Pandora's box. We'll have another whole hour conversation on it. But like, I will say for the record, the Pinnacle 90s Pinnacle foil tech, there are some, and then some of them just hit differently. Like they're all a little bit different. It's just this weird. Did
they do basketball? I know Pinnacle did football, baseball. Did they mess with basketball? Chris, do you remember?
I think so.
They did a little bit of basketball because there's a Kobe Pinnacle that MK was going after.
Of course.
So they did a little bit of basketball, but not to the extent. And it was unlicensed. It was not an NBA licensed card. So I don't know. I don't think they ever held the NBA license.
They might not have, but yeah, for baseball, Griffey guys, if there's like a little subset of segment of the hobby, that community that's like Pinnacle. Sure. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much. This is awesome. Obviously, we could talk for a long, long time about all of this, and you really couldn't even still get it all in. But we definitely had some fun conversations about Michael Jordan's Grail cards, what Grails really mean, how often they come to market, what does that even mean? Some macroeconomics. We talked about the housing market. We talked about so many things. You guys are great. Thank you so much for being a part of this series. I hope folks comment below. I hope we talked a lot about and enough about how you can still, at a budget, get involved in this hobby with a Michael Jordan, with anybody. Have fun collecting. It doesn't have to cost you too much. Always be mindful of what you're spending. Never spend beyond your means. Open up a high-yield money market account at your local bank. It's a great place to be right now. Get great interest rates.
Is there such a thing? There's high-yield money market accounts?
Well, we have one. I'm not going to talk.
DM me right after this. I want you to DM me and let me know.
All right, well, we're not. That's not on our footprint, but I'll still talk to you. Hey, thanks, guys, gentlemen. You're wonderful, and yeah, go check out the crossover every Friday night for the most part. And Cajun Cardboard is an awesome show. A lot to listen to, or a lot of great content, and they talk about this stuff a lot. So, thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your evening, and I hope everybody out there enjoys this episode. Comment below, and we'll see you all later.